topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the host and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
Welcome to the Ask the Expert show on W4CY Radio and Talk4 TV, where we bring you educational information from top local experts in the fields of legal, health, financial, and home improvement. Now sit back and listen to experts in family law, association law, hearing loss, business brokers, home care, along with many other topics. Now here are your hosts, Steve-O and Sophia.
Hey, good afternoon, Tennessee and Missouri. Welcome to the 16th year of the Ask the Expert show, where we bring you the finest experts in the field of legal, health, financial, and home improvement. Oh, I've got a special show for you today. This show, let me tell you something, a little bit about this show. This is our tax relief show, and this show has become it's the number 3 show of all of our shows. But what's amazing is it's been in such a short time, but this show has become so big. Starting next month, we are taking this show national. So we will be communicating throughout the United States. And I got to thank you. We've gotten so many emails on this show, which we are going to read today. There's no way I can get them all in today, but we've got the perfect person, attorney Lance Drury of the Drury Law Firm. Good afternoon, Lance.
Well, good afternoon, Steve. It's always a pleasure to see you.
You're going to have to start wearing sunglasses. You're becoming such a big star on the Ask the Expert show.
Well, I'm so excited that we're taking the program national. That'll be something else. That's going to be a lot of fun for you, and it's going to be a lot of fun for me, Steve.
Yes. No, a lot of work for you. That's what it's going to mean.
That's okay.
And you sure don't mind work, Lance.
No, I sure don't.
I know you are. So Lance, I got to, first of all, congratulations as your move up the ladder on the Ask the Expert show. And we really appreciate all the letters, which is going to take up for sure the whole show. But we're getting so many new people who are finding the show. Tell people about your firm, Lance R. Drury Law Firm.
Well, Steve, we have 4 offices in St. Genevieve, Missouri, which is a small town on the banks of the Mississippi, very historic. We have an office in St. Louis, Nashville, Tennessee, and San Antonio, Texas. And by the end of October, we're going to open an office in Houston, Texas. Texas, here we come. We're going to be stronger there than ever. We have over 1,000 clients at any one time. Have 16 employees, soon to be 17, 9 attorneys and support staff. And, 70% or more of our clients are self-employed individuals. Those are the people who get in trouble with the IRS because the taxes aren't taken out automatically.
Lance, it's amazing that I never realized that there's so many people out there with tax issues. And from what I understand, it's not going to get any better. They're out there. They want to collect every single dime, which is going to, and I just want people to know it's so important. Before we get started the show today, folks, don't try to handle this yourself. Not when you've got a great law firm out there like Lance Drury. I am telling you, you do not want to go up against the U.S. government, the IRS. You need to put it in the hands of people who do this every day. So, Lance, let's get started with our first question. Ken in St. Louis, he says, now you have been in the tax business for quite a while. I've learned from watching your show, you have a lot of experience working with the IRS. What has that experience brought you?
Well, I think that experience has brought me that you shouldn't do this on your own, like you said just now, Steve. I had a phone call today. Two guys drove down. They have a lot of business liability. Now they've asserted the trust fund against them personally. And, it's like this guy has been nice, but I said, now wait, I know this happens all the time. They're going to use tactics just like the cops do. And what happens is they come in, they're real nice. And the reason they're real nice is they're trying to get you to volunteer information to them. And so once they get what they want, then they turn on a dime. Now, that's not 100% true. There are some revenue officers out there who are decent to deal with, but for the most part, they are not your friend. They are not there to try to get you the best possible deal. They're there to collect as much money as possible for the IRS. Now, you talked earlier, there's 26 million delinquent taxpayers. But by the year 2032, wow. By the year 2032, that's going to escalate to 35 million people. So even though I'm 72 wow. and I plan on working 10 more years, I think I've got job security here. The other thing that people need to know is this is another reason why you shouldn't do it on your own. You call the automated collection system. They're not always well trained. They don't always know what they're talking about. Now, I know when they are talking the right thing or the wrong thing, and so do all my attorneys. But we spend $50 to $100 a year keeping up on it. But a layperson calls them up and somebody there tells them something. They're not going to know if what they're telling them is right or not. But that's why we spend so much time. They're a bureaucracy. Things are constantly changing, and they don't have enough people there. They're making more mistakes than ever. They're not always properly trained. So this is why you need the guidance of a law firm that's got a lot of experience in this area. The other thing I've learned is that I tell everybody, if you don't hire me, there's 3 rules. You hire an attorney that does this every single day. Accountants are great with the numbers, but guess what? I've seen accountants give terrible advice to their clients about IRS matters. They're great at what they do, tax preparation, but that's 90% of what they do. So they're just dabbling in it. Number 2, go local. And number 3, don't hire one of the big boys. There's a lot of scam artists out there. They just take your money. They never tell you up front what this is going to cost you. They just keep asking for more and more money every month, and they don't do anything. So you got to watch who you hire. You've got to do your due diligence. We're a 4.8 out of 5 Google reviews in St. Louis. We're a 4.9 out of 5 in Nashville. So we've got a proven track record. Go to my website, look at the testimonials, see the speeches I've given across the country, the books I've co-authored, and the awards that I've won.
Lance, first, I rarely tell you this, but people love hearing your stories. One of the things that I've noticed, though, when you were talking about these scams, that there's so many of these national commercials, and I've done due diligence on them, and it come to find out people will pay them money, and then it's like pulling teeth for them to get them to return a phone call. And I know how important customer service is to you.
That's true. And I just had a case, a guy from San Antonio. He's being audited, and I met him a year ago in San Antonio because he had hired another attorney that I had always thought was a good attorney, and he said he wasn't returning his calls. He didn't know what was going on. I had to explain to him what a notice of deficiency is, what happens in U.S. tax court. So we had a nice discussion for about 45 minutes, but I said, go back to him. If you have problems down the road, then give me a call. Well, he hired us last month, and he told me, he said, I ended up calling the auditor and finding out if this guy was doing anything. And they said, no, he basically ghosted us. So that's when he finally hired us. In fact, 2 of my attorneys in San Antonio rented a car and went down to his ranch for 2 days because they're doing a very extensive audit. And we think that's going to continue for a lot of those ranches down there in southern Texas.
Let's go to Reed in Nashville. Lance, first of all, I enjoy your show so much. I've turned on a friend of mine who's having tax problems. How long does it usually take to you finalize negotiations with the IRS?
Well, that depends. Now, if you have a revenue officer, they want to get it resolved as quickly as possible. They want to get it out of their inventory. But if you're in the automated collection system, you're probably talking 9 months to a year. And I've said this before, but the president of the American Society of Tax Problem Solvers has said that if you don't spend at least 9 months on your client's case, you're doing that client a disservice. I know there are several practitioners. You know, you got to fill out financial statements. Nobody fills them out right the first time. But guess what? There's a lot of practitioners just take whatever those numbers are the first time, and then they call up the IRS to get an agreement. We don't do that because they're submitting those numbers on that financial statement under penalties of perjury. And so for certain categories of expenses, we have to have documentation that that expense exceeds the national standards. The national standards the IRS compiles for different categories of expenses, what they think that number should be. For example, housing and utilities. Every county has a different number for that expense, and it's dependent upon the number of people in the household. So, you know, we may go back 3, 4, 5 times because we got to get the numbers right. We got to get the documentation. We may be able to give people advice on how to structure their assets and their expenses so they can get a better deal out of Uncle Sam. So I tell everybody when they hire me, if you don't do what I ask you to do, you're wasting your money. You got to get your tax returns prepared. You got to give us the financial information we need, or we can't help you out. Don't waste your money to hire me if you're not going to do what I ask you to do. And invariably, we have maybe 10% of our clients, it's a year later, year and a half later, they still haven't either filed all their tax returns or they haven't filled out the financial statements. It's a lot of work for the taxpayer. It's a lot of work for us. But guess what? If you want to deal with Uncle Sam, you got to put in the time. You got to put in the work. If you don't, then they're just going to want it all back.
And honesty with you is so important that they're completely upfront with you when they retain your services.
Yeah, and you wouldn't, I won't say it happens the majority of the time, but I would say 15, 20% of the time, people will tell me what their problem is in the initial consult, and then we get involved, we find out there's more, and then they'll admit later on that there's something more going on than what we were told during the initial consultation. And so then we've opened up another can of worms, a lot more work. And, you know, so it's very important to be as honest as you can be in the initial consult. But the other thing that happens, Steve, half the time during the initial consultation, people know exactly what their problem is with the IRS. But the other half of the time, and this is because they know part of what their problem is, but we get involved. Well, there's more years of unfiled returns or there's more liability. And it's not because they're trying to lie to me or to be deceptive. They just don't know, because the IRS makes this so confusing, so complicated for the average individual that, you know, you've got to get professional assistance to get this resolved properly and to get the best possible deal out of Uncle Sam.
Hey, Lance, you remember when they were talking in Congress about making it so much easier to file your income tax, that they were going to have a one-sheeter that was easy to fill out? Whatever happened to that?
Well, I don't know. I don't know if it was the lobbying group or what, but I doubt if that's going to happen. You know, they talk about that if they would pass a flat tax. but I don't know that we're ever going to see a flat tax implemented in this country.
I don't.
And no, I don't think that that's ever going to happen. And one of the problems with the IRS is they're not funded properly. Everybody doesn't want the IRS to be funded properly, so they don't come after them. But guess what? Once they do, the service is going to be terrible. It's taken so much more time. They're making so many more mistakes because they're not trained properly. They're not staffed properly. And so, like an amended tax return, that can take a year or two to be processed. And now they've just cut out 50% of the taxpayer advocate services. So it's a real zoo up there right now, and everything is just taking much longer than it did historically.
Let's go to Ronnie in Memphis. He said, I am really enjoying your show. Thank you for taking the time to educate us. Does a lien ever drop off?
Yes, it does. Now, here's the deal. The lien is supposed to be released 6 to 9 months prior to the expiration of the collection statute. So let me just amplify on that a little. The IRS does not have forever to collect the tax. It is normally 10 years from the date the tax is assessed. However, there are so many things that can stop the running of the statute on collections that for each tax liability period, we have to calculate what's the last day the IRS has to collect against somebody. But here's the problem now, because they're so understaffed. A lot of people, in fact, I just talked to a woman this morning, they're going to have to hire us to get the lien released because the IRS is no longer releasing those liens like they were. And so we have to go in, file the proper legal paperwork to get the lien released after the expiration of the collection statute date. But here's the other reason why we're having to do this. These title companies are scared to death of the IRS. And so liens that don't even attach to property, they're requiring the paperwork from the IRS showing a release of the lien, even though the lien itself is supposed to be self-releasing. On that lien, it says, here's the last day to refile the lien. For high dollar cases, sometimes the IRS refiles the lien within that 10-year period. They're not going to do it for a low dollar case, but they will if you're over 6 figures owed to them. So, it's a mess. The lien doesn't last forever, though. That's the good news. And guess what? If a lien hasn't been filed and people come to me, and then we find out that they want to sell their house, we tell them to sell it now before we get them an agreement, because if we set up an agreement with the IRS and there's not a lien in place already, then they are going to file a lien. And then, of course, the proceeds from the sale would have to be used to satisfy that lien. So in that particular instance, we tell them to sell the home first, and then we'll go in and get them an agreement.
Lance, we just got a text in. Really enjoying your show. I'm curious, if I'm audited, does your company go with me on the audit?
No, because you are not going to the audit. We're going to the audit.
Oh.
You're not going to get anywhere close to the IRS. And so we can do that. In fact, on this audit down in Texas, I told the 2 attorneys down there, you make sure that our client is gone, that he's nowhere around, because they're going to start asking him questions and people are going to want to answer, and we don't want that. So we have them as far away as possible, because what the taxpayer says, the delinquent taxpayer, what he says to the IRS or she says to the IRS, they can hold against them, but they can't do that with an attorney. So it's a condition. When somebody signs up, we tell them it is a condition of our continued representation that you never call the IRS yourself, because then we don't know what's going on. And then, we can't argue with the revenue officer or whoever's calling from the IRS because we're not privy to that conversation. So we want to know what's going on. And so we don't want the taxpayer getting anywhere close on their own, because I've had them tell them the wrong thing when they've tried to do this on their own. They do it all the time before they hire my firm. So that's the other problem that we have in having the taxpayer themselves call the IRS.
And probably this might be our last one, Jack in Chesterfield. How does your firm differ from other firms?
Well, I think we work harder, for one thing. We will go the extra mile for our clients, particularly in going through those financial statements. I've seen it time and time again where they had gone to somebody else and they didn't really spend the time that was necessary to fill out those financial statements properly. They're confusing, they're complicated for the average individual. And like I said, we don't do it just one time and we're done. We get substantiation. We may go back and forth 2, 3, 4 times. And I think that's the thing that we do. The other thing is we will delay a resolution for a client and hold on to the case. And obviously we got to spend more time because we got to continue to monitor the case. But we're going to do that if we think we can get our client a better deal. For example, if somebody's going to retire in 6 months or a year, we may say, well, let's wait until after you're retired, because then we'll get you a better deal because your income is less. You have less ability to pay the back taxes back. Because if I get them an agreement now, our services are concluded. And then if they retire and they say, I can't afford this, well, then they got to call us back up to modify the agreement down the road. So rather than do that and prove more expensive for our client in terms of our fees, we just tell them we'll wait the 6 months or a year, continue to monitor your case. We're not going to charge you a higher fee, and we'll get your case resolved then down the road.
Lance, I have to thank you because you take out time out of your busy schedule to do the show. It's a free show. We don't charge anybody for it. You guys get such great advice. I can't thank people enough for all the letters, people taking time to write. Lance, how do they reach your Missouri, Tennessee office?
Well, they can go to Lance Drury Law if they want. There's a toll-free number as well. In St. Louis, it's coming up at the bottom of the screen. It's 314-260-1300. In Nashville, it's 615-733-8168. We'll be happy to help you. That's what we're here for. I'm the liberation architect. Most tax attorneys talk numbers. I talk financial freedom. I'm the guy who saves Fay Ray from the clutches of King Kong, and I hope to do that for a long, long time.
Oh, I love it. Hey, Lance, have a wonderful weekend. Thank you so much, and we'll be looking forward to your new national show next month.
I can't wait. I am looking so forward to that with you, Steve. You do a great job here. It's always a pleasure to see you.
No, you do the great job. We love you, Lance. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
That's attorney Lance Drury of the Lance Drury Law Firm. We're going to go to a quick break. We'll be right back.
Thanks for tuning in today to the Ask the Expert show on W4CY Radio and Talk 4 TV. Tune in next week and every week to hear more from our experts on personal injury, insurance, air condition repairs, estate planning, Medicare, and many other topics in the areas of legal, health, financial, and home improvement. See you next week.